Hey, so I want to take some time and show you how I would draw the epidermis. This camera angle is awful, but it is what it is. So I'm going to draw the epidermal layers, and then we'll add on the dermal layers, and we'll talk about how the dermis is structured. So I always start with the stratum basal, right? Those wavy lines, that always represents the stratum basal. My color's not really showing up well here, but I will be using different colors. So this stratum basal is really only one cell layer thick. So I'm just going to kind of draw a bunch of cells in here, and I'll give them a nuclei, like a little dot, so it looks like it's just a single layer cell. So this is the stratum basal. This is that germinative layer. This is where all the new growth is going to come from. And a lot of times the layers will just be abbreviated like S basal, like that. I hope that this doesn't show up backwards for you. It shows up backwards here, is what it is. Okay, so above that layer is our spinosum. So this is a thinner layer, and I'm just going to draw it, very incorrectly, but this is just so you can get the idea of what it is. The stratum spinosum is just above our stratum basal, and then above that, the thicker layer is our granulosum. So the granulosum is considerably thicker, and you'll see this in our lab models, how these things kind of pan out. Notice as we move up through the layers, you don't quite have that same pattern of ridging anymore. It kind of like equals out as we go up. So this is granulosum. And then we get to the top, which is where the corneum is. And unless we're in thick skin, of course, then we would have the lucidum. So the corneum can be much thicker, right? S corneum. So below this epidermal structure is our dermis. So this whole area here is going to be our dermis. Let me point out these ridges again. I'm going to give them a name. So these ridges are called epidermal ridges. So the stratum basal creates epidermal ridges. So you can kind of label it if you want, epidermal ridges. These ridges are what give you your fingertips and the different patterns on your skin. If you look carefully at your skin, you see all the little lines and wrinkles in there. That's because of the pattern of the epidermal ridges and that stratum basal below. So let's talk about the two layers of our dermis. The first one is called the papillary layer. So the papillary layer, this is made of dense, irregular connective tissue. So this tissue is kind of like right? And of course, these thick lines represent the major fiber in this layer, which is collagen. Collagen's our main fiber in dense, irregular connective tissue. So I'm just going to label it DICT, and this is the papillary layer. So notice the top of this papillary layer kind of molds into those epidermal ridges, those kind of bumps or hills on the top of the papillary layer. Those are called dermal papilla. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4 dermal papilla. The dermal papilla are just kind of like, it's like the Velcro that sticks those two layers together. It's just for firmer attachment. And again, this just reinforces the patterns on the surface of the skin. So deep to that papillary layer is the reticular layer. The reticular layer is not as dense. This is areolar connective tissue, so it's very loose. In this areolar connective tissue, you have lots of different fibers, you have more matrix, you have more random cells, right? This is the reticular layer, and it's made of areolar connective tissue. Now below that would then be the hypodermis. So the hypodermis, not part of our cutaneous membrane, but it's there. We should mention it. So we can draw some of the cells in there that we may have mentioned or noted before. In the stratum basal, we have these little Merkel cells. So Merkel cells are little sensory receptors. Merkel. They're giving information about light touch. And then we have these dendritic cells or Langerhans cells that are kind of floating around there also. And remember, they are kind of big blobby type cells. These are like macrophages. They're part of your immune system. So I'll label it this way, a dendritic cell. And then we also have melanocytes. Melanocytes are the skin pigment. And so they're actually very large cells that kind of sit in the stratum basal layer. And they have that brownish, orangish, yellowish pigment, a melanocyte. So we'll kind of pause here. We'll talk more specifically about the dermis, and then we'll come back to this drawing in a minute.